So folks, we're back for part two. We're going into the history of Annapolis, Maryland. We got Dr. Mowbray here. Last session was incredible, so we're getting into the second session of it. We were just talking about Annapolis High, Bates High, and how they tied. And so, Dr. Mowbray, can you really take us how this tied, segregation, integration, all of that with the school system in the city of Annapolis, Maryland?
Sure, I'd be happy to share with you, given that just a few days ago, I, along with quite a number of others, celebrated 50 years of graduation from Annapolis Senior High School. And as one of the speakers on Saturday night at the dinner dance program, I took the opportunity to talk about how I and my classmates became a part of the senior class of 1968. For many of us, we became a part of that class by force, not by choice. Although many of us could have gone to Annapolis Senior High School when we left elementary school, we chose not to go. We chose to go to the historical black school in the city and the county, which was Wiley H. Bates Junior Senior High School. Mr. Bates was a relative of Janice Hayes Williams, who I mentioned, who does a lot of research and talking and writing on African Americans in the city of Annapolis and Anne Arundel County. At any rate, some of my classmates went on to Annapolis High School from Adams Park Elementary, from Prevailed Elementary, from Eastport Elementary, and some of the other elementary schools on the periphery of the city of Annapolis. And those of us who went to Bates, more often than not, we went there because we wanted that Bates experience that we had heard older siblings talk about. How the teachers really taught you, and they taught you more than academics. They taught you how to live, how to place yourself in social environments in positive ways, and truly how to survive a world that was not necessarily organized to accept you. They gave us a real foundation for living, if you want to just cut to the chase.
So my question, was Bates African American?
Bates was the only African American secondary school in Anne Arundel County, not just Annapolis, but Anne Arundel County.
And this in the state of Maryland?
In the state of Maryland, and it housed grades 7 through 12. Okay. And at various times, the population was so great that the 7th grades were housed in annexes, which included churches, St. Augustine, an African American Catholic church over in the 4th Ward, First Baptist Church on West Washington Street, and the Stanton Center, which had been Stanton Elementary School, which is where I did 7th grade. And then you also had groups of 7th graders at the big building, as we called it, Bates Junior Senior High School on Smithfield Street. And folks came from as far north as Brooklyn.
Brooklyn, New York?
Brooklyn Park in Anne Arundel County,
Maryland,
close to the Baltimore line.
Okay.
Pumphrey, Tracy's Landing, which is so far south you'd think you're in Calvert County. They came from all corners of the county if they were African American and they wanted a secondary education for a number of years. Now, while Brown versus the Board of Education of Topeka, Kansas was settled in 1954 by the Supreme Court, stating that separate was not equal, as was the practice. separate but equal men. If we keep the kids in their schools, black schools, white schools, then that's fine. We'll give them an equal education. But that was not true because the black schools weren't funded to the extent that you had all of the materials of instruction that the white schools had. And while some cities and some counties and some school districts did follow Brown's decision shortly after it was decided in '54, others dragged their feet. And Maryland and Anne Arundel County were two entities in that group. And you had some smatterings of integration. Because, as I said, when one of my cousins graduated in 1960 from Adams Park Elementary School, he, along with some of his classmates, went to Annapolis High School. And they often described what was not always a very wholesome environment for them. While I graduated 2 years later, there was still a choice. You could go to Annapolis High School or you could go to Bates. And in 1966, it was decided that that was no longer going to be the case. The graduating class of 1966 at Bates High School would be the last class to graduate from that school. All students who were underclassmen at that time would now have to attend the school that was in their attendance area around the county, which meant that for those of us who lived in the city of Annapolis and the areas around Annapolis proper would have to go to Annapolis High School.
Wow.
And very little, if anything, was done to prepare for that from my perspective. We arrived there and it was clear. Some in the administration, most of the instructional staff, and a very large majority of the students did not want us there. And they made that clear through their actions, their words, their looks. But it was what we had. And for me, it was a 2-year experience. And I have always given credit to 2 places that made it possible for me to survive and be successful in that environment. One came from my family and extended family, and the fact that they were rooted in faith, they were persistent, and they were supportive. And the second came from what we got as students at Wiley H. Bates Junior Senior High School.
So I tell you what, folks, another lesson from Dr. Mowbray. See you next time.